This is how I've been funding my adult gap year. I got laid off over a year ago. In that time, I've traveled to 6 countries, moved from the UK to the US, and lived without income during the entire time because when you get laid off abroad, you don't qualify for unemployment benefits. If you're wondering what it's like to take time off after a layoff or take an adult gap year, I'll share everything I've learned during this time. If you're new here, my name is Yukes. I walked away from a path of prestige in order to build my dream life as a baby YouTuber. This is a personal snapshot, not advice, but my goal is to help you think more clearly about your decisions when it comes to taking a career break or an adult gap year. This video breaks down how I've made it work so far, the money, the trade-offs, the risks. Even if you're not thinking about taking an adult gap year, this video might be useful to think about your runway in case something does happen and you do get laid off. How I survived over a year without any income. Some of it's strategic, some of it's privilege, and one payout totally surprised me. First of all, I got laid off abroad in London, which means I don't get unemployment benefits. I also had a 6-month lease at the time that I wanted to finish up, but I did get a severance package, which was about 3 months of my UK salary. This is the average of product manager salaries in tech at the time. A lot of my savings ended up in pounds because I was living and working in London for 2 years, and since the pound is strong against the dollar right now, I'm benefiting a little bit from the exchange rate. If you want to calculate your runway based on your current spending and how many months of savings you have, this is how I do it without having to figure out exactly how much I spend every month, which is I take my savings, all of my savings, and then I divide it by my monthly take-home pay. So you know what works for you for your salary, and now you know what could work with your savings if you just think about your savings as income that you're drawing on every month. I find it easier to figure out my runway based on my old salary rather than figuring out how much I spend and basing it on that, because to me, you end up making a more conservative estimate of your runway and then will end up spending even less than you expected. I've got 10 months of runway based on my old income, and 3 months of that I don't want to use. That'll be my emergency fund, which means 6 to 7 months is about how much runway I have, at least, because I spend a lot less now than I did while I was working. My whole goal in this video is to be honest about trade-offs, not brag about how much I've saved. I hope something I've said helps you figure out what works for you. What helps is that I live with my parents in a low cost of living area. People have different views and experiences with living at home, but for me, it was a great financial reset. And if it is an option that's available to you, you might benefit from it too. And I will cover later how I managed to move country without a job, because I did have a 6-month lease at the time in London that I wanted to finish up. You know that surprise payout that I talked about earlier? Well, it came from Goldman, and I hope that it's an encouraging story for you if you've ever felt discriminated against or treated unfairly at work. This payout was from a class action lawsuit. Goldman Sachs got sued for gender discrimination in its evaluation process, and it resulted in the largest payout ever for a gender discrimination lawsuit. I did not bring forth this lawsuit, but I was one of the members because it became a class action. I just want to take a moment to thank the women who sued Goldman Sachs so many years ago. They did the work, they fought for so many years, and if you faced unfairness or discrimination at work, this is a reminder that sometimes systems do work and it's worth knowing your rights. This is one of those things that you can't plan for, but I hope this encourages you and reminds you that change can happen even if it's slow. Now let's get to how I afford to travel so much. And I'll show you what I do to cover $600 flights for free. By the way, I mentioned I had moved from London back to the US, and we're gonna cover how I did that at minimal cost too. First, I use credit card points and frequent flyer miles a lot to cover the cost of flights. For example, I used miles to cover my flight to France last year, and my flight to Jordan was totally covered by credit card points. If you're good at tracking and using rewards, this might be a good way to extend your travel budget without feeling deprived. If you're wondering how I rack up so many points without spending a lot, I take advantage of welcome bonuses, which is mostly a US credit card thing. There are welcome bonuses I have gotten from applying for UK credit cards, but they're not as high as US credit cards. I've also accumulated a lot of points because of work travel. So if you travel a lot for work, make sure you get the miles for those trips. I'm super strict about paying all my credit cards off in full. So I have auto pay set up and I don't really think about it. I treat it like a debit card that gets rewards. If that's not your style, it might not be worth the risk. Although I don't recommend this for everyone unless you're super strict about paying off your cards, auto pay, tracking everything, and just knowing when to close cards to avoid their annual fees. I probably still have more cards than I need. A lot of my travel also involves me going to visit friends in other countries and staying with them. So I try not to go somewhere unless I have some kind of personal connection to the place. A bunch of my travel vlogs on this channel also break down how much I paid for different trips. And this was a way to help me track my expenses, but also you can see the way I budgeted and saved money on each of those trips. Most of my expenses have gone towards rent, hobbies, and travel. I currently don't use any budgeting apps, but it's something that I want to start doing in the future. If there's anything you're still wondering about, just drop it in the comments. I read every one and I might make a video from it. Now let's get to how did I actually move out of my London flat. I'll break down those costs now. My secret is that I picked a place that was fully furnished. I didn't take back any large items with me. I was traveling already to the US for weddings, visa stuff, and family. So every time I would travel back to the US, I would take an extra carry-on with some packing from my flat. So over the multiple trips I took each time I was visiting friends, I would take a little bit more at a time until when I actually moved out of my flat, I only had 2 suitcases and I went straight back home. So my total cost to move back home was just the extra cost of my carry-on. That said, the move was a lot easier because the place came fully furnished, so I didn't have to ship back any large items. Here's the part that I don't really like to think about, the part that could backfire on me if I'm not careful. I don't have insurance. And I don't have Cobra either because I was laid off abroad. This is risky, I don't recommend it, but this is part of the real math that comes from being unemployed in the United States. This is not the case outside of the US, so skip ahead if that's not you. I pay out of pocket for all my doctor's visits. When I hit my head after a fall in New York, I used AI to decide if I should go to the ER because I didn't have health insurance. Well, this is what really happened. I'm really sad that I fell. I fell on my butt, I hit the back of my head. And although I went to first aid for an initial checkout, the next day I was feeling really weird, like my neck was sore and my head was still hurting. So I wanted to get a CAT scan. The lady at the urgent care said that she didn't want me to waste $100 to try to go because urgent care doesn't do CAT scans. And she recommended I go to the ER, where because I don't have insurance, they are legally required to work with me on a payment plan. Ultimately, I used Claude AI to figure out, do I have symptoms of a concussion that means I need to go to the ER right now? And after chatting with Claude AI, I decided I would wait until I got back to Maryland to see my local doctor. I ended up paying $60 out of pocket for the doctor's visit, who referred me to physical therapy, which was another $125 for one session out of pocket, which was significantly cheaper than paying $500 to go see a doctor in New York. I used AI for peace of mind, and I did initially get checked out by the first aid at the ice rink, but no one should have to go through what I went through. Again, I don't recommend doing what I did, but these are the things I was considering as somebody who's uninsured in the US. This is why I figure skate with a helmet and why I mostly stay at home. And when I do go travel, I go to the UK where they have free healthcare. My emergency fund and my runway are the same pot of money, which means every month I'm not earning money, my safety net gets smaller and smaller. And that's scary, but also motivating. To stretch it, I'm testing one income idea every month, starting with the most realistic one, freelance or UGC. I did just get monetized on YouTube, thank you, but most creators have multiple streams of income and ads are just part of it. Usually they get more money through brand deals. For those who don't know, UGC is user-generated content, which is when you actually create content talking about a product or service that you then license out to a brand to use as testimonial for their product. If you're curious about trying it too, let me know and maybe we can figure it out together. and also be more intentional about investing. But I know all of those things take time. I'm even experimenting with coding a Roblox game, partly because my little brothers play Roblox and it'd be really nice to make a game we all like to play, and because I want to show that it's never too late to learn a new skill. If you've ever wondered if you can learn something new mid-career, maybe this gives you a nudge to try. Right now, I'm watching every YouTube video on how to make your first $10,000 a month. It feels like I'm building another career, but a lot of these skills are still transferable. If I wanted to break into growth product management, for example, there's a lot of similarities. I'm still building an audience, I'm still thinking about metrics, and I'm still thinking about how to grow this channel. So if you're in a similar boat, maybe look at what you're doing week to week. You might be surprised at how many transferable skills you actually might be building, even if you're trying something totally new. This is how I've been funding my adult gap year. I hope this gives you some information and helps you think about how you might be able to reset if that's something that you're interested in. I've talked before on this channel about how relocating to London actually saved me from my first layoff and some tips about how to negotiate your severance if you have been laid off. So check those out if you want to see more.